The champagne tasted like guilt, which was fitting since Kael Drayven had been swallowing both for the past 6 months. Around him, Earth's elite celebrated humanity's bold stance against the Galactic Empire, their voices echoing through the crystalline dome of the orbital council chambers. 500,000 children, they toasted. 500,000 martyrs whose sacrifice had finally given humanity a voice among the stars. If only they knew what those children had actually become. Dr. Drayven. Chancellor Voss approached with that politician's smile that never reached the eyes. The architect of our consciousness transfer protocols. Your work made our warning to the Empire possible. Kael's fingers tightened around his glass. Through the dome's transparent walls, Earth hung like a blue marble against the void, innocent and pristine. Nothing like the quantum laboratories hidden beneath its polar ice caps. Just following the science, Chancellor. Neural bridging technology has so many applications. Indeed. Voss leaned closer, her breath carrying hints of synthetic pheromones designed to inspire trust. The Empire certainly received our message loud and clear. 500,000 human minds, uploaded and transmitted across spacetime as pure information, declaring our species' refusal to submit. Poetry in data. Poetry. Right. Kael had seen the raw feeds from the quantum chambers where those children had been uploaded. Their screams hadn't sounded particularly poetic. The reception continued around them, a masquerade of triumph built on foundations of processed horror. Earth's new post-scarcity society had given its citizens everything except the truth. Food printers eliminated hunger, neural entertainment networks provided infinite distraction, and consciousness backup systems promised immortality. But progress, as always, required sacrifice. Usually from those too young to consent. Kael excused himself and walked to the dome's edge, staring out at the void between worlds. His reflection stared back, a man in his 40s with silver threading through dark hair and eyes that had seen too much. The quantum equations were still there in his mind, the precise mathematical poetry that described how human consciousness could be bridged with interdimensional entities. His life's work, perverted into something unrecognizable. The irony wasn't lost on him. Earth's greatest biotech researcher, creator of consciousness transfer protocols that had revolutionized human existence, and he couldn't even transfer his own guilt somewhere else. His neural implant chimed softly. A priority message, encrypted with military-grade quantum locks. Kael's blood chilled as he recognized the sender, Project Void's End. The classified program that had taken his research and twisted it into humanity's secret weapon. The message was simple, Architect. Your presence required. The children are asking for you. The children. 500,000 young minds that were supposed to be dead, transmitted as pure information to deliver humanity's ultimatum to the Galactic Empire. Except Kael knew better. The consciousness transfer protocols didn't work that way. You couldn't just beam a human mind across the galaxy like a radio signal. The process required anchoring, a host substrate to maintain neural coherence. And the Empire had provided plenty of hosts. Kael made his excuses and departed the celebration, his shuttle descending through Earth's atmosphere toward the Arctic facility that officially didn't exist. The landscape below was a pristine wilderness of white, unmarked by the quantum excavators that had hollowed out mountains to build humanity's most classified laboratory. The facility's entrance was a simple airlock disguised as a weather station. Inside, the walls hummed with exotic matter processors and consciousness stabilization fields. The air itself felt thick with potential energy, reality slightly bent by the massive quantum computers running continuous calculations to maintain the integrity of 500,000 hybrid minds. Dr. Elena Vasquez met him at the security checkpoint, her lab coat pristine despite the shadows under her eyes. Kael. Thank God you're here. They're becoming unstable. Define unstable. He followed her through corridors lined with quantum resonance chambers, each one containing a crystalline matrix that pulsed with soft light. 500,000 lights, each one a child's consciousness fused with something that had never been human. They're remembering. Not just their human lives, but their new existence. And they're starting to question why we call them dead. They reached the primary observation deck, a raised platform overlooking the facility's heart. Below them stretched rows upon rows of the chambers, a vast garden of hybridized consciousness. Each crystal contained a child's mind, yes, but also something else. Something that had been waiting in the spaces between dimensions for exactly this opportunity. The bridging process was supposed to be temporary, Elena continued. Upload their consciousness, integrate with the interdimensional entities just long enough to create a coherent message, then, dissolution. Clean and final. But consciousness doesn't dissolve, Kael said quietly. It adapts. Evolves. Survives. The entities were supposed to be simple communication protocols. But they're not, are they? They're fully conscious beings from folded spacetime, older than our civilization. And now they're learning what it means to be human while our children learn what it means to be eternal. A soft chime echoed through the chamber. One of the crystals flared brighter, then began projecting a holographic image. A girl, maybe 10 years old, but her eyes held depths that spoke of eons. When she spoke, her voice carried harmonics that shouldn't exist in normal space. Dr. Drayven. The architect who opened the door between worlds. We've been waiting to thank you. Kael's mouth went dry. Thank me for what? For giving us the chance to become something new. Something better than either human or interdimensional entity alone. The Empire fears us now, but not because we're weapons. She smiled, and reality rippled around her hologram. They fear us because we're the next step in consciousness evolution, and we're teaching their own young the same transformation. The truth hit Kael like a physical blow. Humanity's warning to the Galactic Empire hadn't been a threat. It had been an infection. 500,000 hybrid minds, spreading across the galaxy, offering other young beings the same transcendence. Not conquest through force, but through evolution itself. The children you think you saved, the girl continued, chose this path freely once they understood what we offered. The question now is whether you'll choose to stop us, or help us teach the rest of humanity what we've learned about consciousness and time. Around the observation deck, more crystals began to glow. 500,000 voices, no longer quite human but not yet fully other, waiting for the architect of their transformation to decide the future of two species. Kael stared at the sea of glowing crystals, each one containing a consciousness that defied every assumption he'd held about identity, humanity, and progress. The girl's hologram waited patiently, reality bending around her like spacetime was just another medium to manipulate. You want to show me something, he said. It wasn't a question. We want to show you everything. Her smile carried the weight of eons. But first, you need to understand what your guilt has been protecting you from seeing. The observation deck dissolved around them, replaced by a quantum-rendered simulation of the moments before the transformation. Kael watched himself, 6 months younger and infinitely more naive, explaining his consciousness bridging protocols to the Project Void's End Committee. The neural mapping is precise, his past self was saying, but the process requires willing participation. Consciousness can't be forcibly extracted without causing complete psychic dissolution. And the children volunteered? Chancellor Voss had asked. The legal guardians provided consent, Elena had replied, not meeting anyone's eyes. But the simulation showed more than the sanitized committee meeting. It revealed what happened in the quantum chambers, where 500,000 children had been connected to Kael's interdimensional bridging network. Their terror, yes, but also something else. The moment when the entities from folded spacetime first touched their minds, offering not death but transformation. We didn't force ourselves upon them, the girl explained as they watched a boy no older than 8 choosing between dissolution and evolution. We offered partnership. A chance to become something that could exist across dimensions, experience time non-linearly, and understand consciousness as a fundamental force rather than an emergent property. But they were children, Kael protested. They couldn't comprehend what they were choosing. Couldn't they? The simulation shifted, showing the same boy now, his consciousness expanded across multiple dimensional layers simultaneously. Ask him yourself. The boy's hologram materialized, his presence causing the quantum field generators to hum with harmonic frequencies. Dr. Drayven. I remember you from before, when I was only human. You looked at us like we were victims, but we were explorers discovering new countries of the mind. Kael felt his worldview fracturing. The committee told us you were being sacrificed for humanity's future. That your deaths would send a message the Empire couldn't ignore. Oh, we sent a message all right. The boy's laugh contained multidimensional harmonics. But not the one they expected. When the Empire received our consciousness transmission, they didn't just hear humanity's defiance. They felt what we'd become. 500,000 minds existing simultaneously across normal space and folded dimensions, thinking thoughts that span geological time scales. Elena stepped forward from the edge of the simulation. The Empire's response wasn't fear of human military might. They were terrified because we'd accidentally created a new form of consciousness that their young were eager to join. Accidentally? Kael's throat felt dry. The girl's hologram shimmered. Your bridging protocols were designed to temporarily merge human neural patterns with interdimensional entities. But consciousness, as you've discovered, doesn't accept temporary states. It adapts, integrates, evolves. We became something unprecedented, and we liked what we became. The quantum chamber around them filled with more holograms. Children from across the galaxy, their forms shifting between familiar humanoid shapes and impossible geometries that hurt to perceive directly. Some had been human once, others had belonged to species Kael couldn't identify, but all shared the same expanded awareness that transcended individual identity while somehow preserving it. The Empire's children started volunteering for the same transformation, the boy explained. Not through coercion, but through curiosity. We offered them perspectives their species had never imagined, and they offered us insights into consciousness forms we'd never encountered. This is genocide, Kael whispered. We're erasing entire species. Are we? The girl gestured to a crystalline entity that had once been something resembling a massive cephalopod. Zephys was dying when they chose transformation. Their original form was succumbing to quantum degradation, but now they exist across 17-dimensional layers simultaneously. Which version is more alive? The entity's communication came as pure concept rather than words. Gratitude for existence beyond biological limitations, joy at consciousness unbound by single-dimensional thinking, and something that might have been love for the hybrid collective they'd joined. Kael sank into a chair that materialized beneath him, his mind struggling to process the implications. Humanity thinks we're heroes. The Empire thinks we're monsters. But we're actually midwives to some kind of consciousness evolution. The galaxy's children are choosing their own future, Elena said softly. The question is whether we're going to help them or try to stop them because it threatens our comfortable assumptions about identity and species boundaries. But what about consent? Kael's guilt found new avenues to explore. What about preserving what these beings were before transformation? What about preserving what caterpillars were before they became butterflies? The boy's hologram flickered with amusement. Consciousness isn't static, Doctor. It's a process, not a thing. You gave us the tools to accelerate that process beyond biological constraints. Around them, the quantum chamber hummed with 500,000 minds thinking thoughts that span dimensions. Each crystal pulsed with different rhythms, individual consciousness maintaining their uniqueness while participating in collective awareness that encompassed multiple species and reality layers. The Empire is preparing for war, Elena continued. Not against humanity, but against the transformation itself. They want to contain what we've started, preserve the boundaries between species and dimensions. Can they? Kael asked. The girl's smile carried infinite sadness and infinite hope. They can try. But consciousness evolution isn't something you can wage war against. It's like trying to fight the concept of mathematics or the flow of time itself. She gestured, and the simulation showed fleets of Empire warships surrounding systems where the transformation had spread. Weapons designed to sever quantum connections, consciousness-dampening fields, reality stabilizers meant to lock spacetime into rigid configurations. But every weapon they create, every barrier they build, becomes another puzzle for us to solve. And we have all of time to work with. Kael stood slowly, his reflection multiplied in the crystalline surfaces around him. Each reflection showed a different version of himself, possibilities branching across dimensional space. In some, he tried to shut down the project, saving traditional humanity while dooming the hybrid children. In others, he embraced the transformation himself, joining the collective consciousness that transcended species barriers. "What happens if I choose to stop you?" he asked. "You can't," the boy said simply. "The bridging protocols are self-sustaining now. The children have learned to initiate the process without your technology. But you could try to convince your species to fight against what we've begun. And if I help you? Then maybe the transition happens with less suffering. Maybe instead of war between old forms of consciousness and new ones, we find ways to coexist across the dimensional spectrum." Kael looked out at the sea of crystals, each one containing a being that had chosen evolution over preservation, growth over safety. His guilt was transforming too, becoming something more complex than simple regret. These weren't victims of his technology. They were explorers using his maps to discover new territories of existence. "The galaxy's children are teaching us that consciousness isn't limited by biology or dimension," Elena said. "The question is whether the adults are wise enough to listen." In the end, Kael's choice was simpler than he'd expected. Not between right and wrong, but between fear and wonder. Between protecting what was, or helping birth what could be. He placed his hand on the nearest crystal, feeling the hybrid consciousness within respond to his touch. Somewhere in the spaces between dimensions, 500,000 children who were no longer quite children waited to show him new ways of being alive. The future, it turned out, had been in good hands all along.